this is Kermit the Frog.
Fascinating. I'm Captain Kirk.
Magic is always there,
as
long as we keep looking for it.
Engage.
What does God need with a starship?
Thank you, love you. Mwah.
I protest. I am not a merry man.
Places, please, and here we go.
Down at Fraggle Rock.
Welcome, Doozers, Gorgs, Trash Heaps, bring gloidy and things to episode 146 of the MuppeTrek Podcast. I'm Jarman.
And I am Steve. Something about before I lost it. I can't find it. There's my note. And I'm Steve. We are on a journey across the stars to compare and contrast the creative worlds of Jim Henson and Gene Roddenberry.
What started as reviews of the Muppet Show and Star Trek the original series has expanded into outer space.
And this week we have Fraggle Rock episode, New Trash Heap in Town, and Star Trek Next Generation episode, Up the Long Ladder.
But before we do that, Steve, I want to rock.
All right, there are all kinds of gems, jewels, and geodes in the world, many of which can be found in Fraggle Rock. And this week's gem is brucite. This is a mineral formation of magnesium hydroxide. It mostly appears in blues, yellows, and greens. It's named after an American mineralogist, Archibald Bruce, who first discovered it in 1824. It's used in insulation and heat-resisting sort of things. However, it can be really dangerous because it can be contaminated with natural asbestos.
Ooh, natural asbestos.
And magnesium hydroxide is used medically as an antacid and a laxative, if you've ever heard of milk of magnesia.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's brucite, and that rocks.
That rocks.
I want to rock!
It also looks really creepy, like it's a bug growing on things sometimes.
Yeah.
Pictures. It's weird.
Well, what's going down in Fraggle Rock? What's up, Doc? Sprocket is working out. He gets a phone book, but Doc has a new weight loss solution. It's a miracle diet drink, rutabaga essence. It sounds too good to be true. Doc is trying to eat the pounds away with his rutabaga juice. Sprocket brings the phone book to lift instead, and Doc uses it to order more pizza. Doc is later dismayed when he realizes he gained 12 pounds on his new weight loss solution. What's going down in Fraggle Rock? Gobo has a broken leg, and all of the fixes for it seem to involve rutabagas, another miracle cure. Mokey has a declaration. She is going to be the first Fraggle to paint a portrait of a hairy-chested batworm. She's going to stay awake to paint one for science reasons. Also, every Fraggle has been having the same bad dream ever since Gobo got hurt of a gourd coming over and walloping him. Wembley recommends he read his Uncle Traveling Matt's postcard. Uncle Traveling Matt has encountered weird bouncing things with little pouches to carry things, and they must be a transportation system. Mokey waits up, but misses the hairy-chested batworm. It strikes a pose, and she finally does her painting. Back in the rock, all the Fraggles are having that same nightmare again about getting thumped by gorgs and all of their legs being thumped. They call a meeting about the dreams and then what they're going to do about them. There is, of course, the world's oldest Fraggle, and he weighs in, telling them to look for a Fraggle with wisdom and in Argyle, and has done something no one has done before. Just then, Mokey comes in with her first ever portrait of the hairy-chested batworm. She is their savior, and they chant her name. Mokey is now effectively the trash heap. She's expected to give advice and solve all the Fraggles' problems. Fraggles line up around the corner, while Red tries to sort of manage the chaos. Boober says he's going to ask Mokey for laundry advice, but Gobo admonishes him. He says, why would he ask Mokey? Boober, you know more about laundry than anybody, and that he has all the wisdom he needs. Gobo goes to see for himself what's happening as Fraggles everywhere celebrate that they don't have to think for themselves anymore. Mokey tells Boober to give up laundry, but Gobo disagrees, much to the malign of the crowd. Boober goes with Mokey's oracle judgment and gives up laundry. Gobo says that this whole thing is a big mess and that Mokey is having too much fun about being in charge than about she cares about the truth. Well, this hurts Mokey deeply. She confronts Gobo, but she doesn't know what to do. in trying to guide the Fraggles, she has only taught them to give up thinking for themselves. Gobo offers to help her figure it out, and they sing a song about it called Helping Hand. Mokey arrives to the Fraggle mob and announces her plan for Gobo. She wants him to challenge Junior Gorg to a duel. Everyone realizes this is madness, and all of them offer to go with Gobo to take the thumping together. Everyone realizes that they don't need Mokey telling them what to do, and when they do need advice, they can face their fears and go out and see the Trash Heap. Well, what's happening with the Trash Heap? She gets her own section this week. The Trash Heap is knitting Argyle and not worried about the Fraggles at all. She reaches out to the Fraggles in their dreams, telling them to look inside for the wisdom they seek, but her message kind of gets garbled, and she can't wait for them to see what she's knitting, Argyle. The Trash Heap finishes scars for Philo and Munge that hang off their nose, and she knows that the Fraggles won't come to her unless something is really important from now on, now that they're looking inside.
Mm-hmm.
And then Boober goes to ask very important advice about how to get out grass stains.
Which we don't find the answer for. I'm curious.
We don't. It gets cut off. So, Jarman, what did you think of this week's episode of Fraggle Rock?
I don't know if you noticed, but in the very beginning of like 10 minutes of the episode, each scene was being cut off very awkwardly and quickly. And it was edited strangely that never been done before. Like it would cut to Mokey with at the end of her bat painting. It was there for like 2 seconds and then it abruptly cut away. And then the traveling
I'd have to watch it again.
Yeah, the traveling mat section, it like abruptly cut off at the end and went right back, smash cut back to the Fraggles again. I was like, that was just odd. But then it just didn't do that anymore the rest of the episodes. It just kind of threw me off. But that was just a little nitpicky thing. I wanted more of that bat guy. He was like making some moves on Mokey.
I thought that the more of the episode was going to revolve around this.
Yeah, like he was getting like making all these noises and eyes at her and stuff, and then they were right next to each other at the end. I thought they were going to like make out or something, but that didn't happen. I thought "Easy Is the Only Way to Go" was a great song. That was really fun, and apparently the guy singing that is the one who writes most of the Fraggle songs. Phil something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because
it was a voice I hadn't heard before. I looked it up too.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, who is this voice? So that he's like, he writes a lot of their songs, and so it was a great song. Yeah, I just think overall really fun episode. I like them showing. At first, it seemed like Mokey was going to be a good oracle because she gave out some practical solutions instead of the cryptic ones that the Trash Heap always does. Like she was like, okay, you lost your flies and you have the flies, then and you want to get rid of them, give your flies to her. And it was like, oh, that's practical. That's cool.
Yeah, there we go.
But then she quickly kind of spirals and she just kind of gets power hungry and gets corrupted basically by her own power. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
I like this idea of the Trash Heap, I don't know, kind of messing with the Fraggles. Like, I remember her as, all wise and a friend of the Fraggles. But there have been multiple episodes where it seems she's just poking them and like messing with them to mess with them. And this feels like one of those.
It's for their own growth, though,
Yeah, I guess. I love the bat creature. You're absolutely right. Stole the show for the very short time he was on camera. But yeah, I mean, this one, I don't know, probably middle of the pack for me.
Yeah.
I don't feel too hot or cold about it.
I thought it was more towards the top for me. Making a final list, I don't know, but it was.
Which we're gonna do. I guess we'll find out later.
But yeah, I thought it was very well put together, and the bat creature was a highlight.
So what were those silly creatures up to this week? Well, the bouncing creatures are kangaroos. Well, kangaroos are marsupials, weird mammals characterized by the young coming out super underdeveloped, and so they have these external pouches that the young climb into to let themselves mature because they come out so weird and small. They're native predominantly to Australia and New Guinea, and it's estimated that there were 48 million of these in the wild in the early 2020s. Mm-hmm. Kangaroos are known for their impressive jumping, and that is because they physiologically are different from a lot of other mammals. Their hips are fused together, which means that they're extremely strong and can handle a lot of muscle tension at their hip joint, but the trade-off is they cannot walk the way you would traditionally think. That is why they have to hop everywhere. They cannot move their back legs independently.
Oh.
But then they've got this super muscular tail that they lean back on to act as like kind of like a crutch or sort of a third leg. Their females have this crazy skill have developed called embryonic diapause. And it's because they came up living in very harsh conditions. So when times of low food, water, extreme weather, they can pause their pregnancies, hold them in place until after, whatever it is passes, and then resume pregnancy as conditions improve.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's what
the silly creatures are up to. Kangaroos.
Do you know what in your research that you did, why there's some that are just gigantically buff and other ones look normal? Like you see these videos, these huge, massive, muscular ones.
And I mean, almost always through developmental history, it's based on how much food. If there's a lot of food, plentiful food, or not a ton of competition for food, then you end up with these very big, tall creatures.
And they're like rats over there, apparently. Like you said, there's millions and millions of them. So there's
46 million of them.
They can't stand them over in Australia. They're pests, basically.
But then where there's less food, that's when you get like little wallabies and stuff.
Yeah, they're
like
cute.
The little marsupials.
But does that bring us to our top 3, bottom 3 of season 1 of Fraggle Rock?
Pump the brakes, man. Best Muppeteering moment.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
So I put there were no real great Muppeteering moments this week.
Oh, pump the brakes.
I said the hairy-chested bat beast, I think, was the highlight from a performance perspective, but there was nothing highly technical,
right,
or sort of like groundbreaking that occurred this week in that regard.
It was on a green screen.
I had to fall back to the performance.
Yeah, I think the bat was great as well, but I just threw in there. I liked Marjorie knitting Philo and Gunge those little nose sweaters and the things attached to their noses.
I did like the nose sweaters.
So that was a cute moment, but not really a Muppeteering moment. So you're right. There's always like something massively impressive from that end of things.
All right. Well, now we can unpump the brakes.
Oh, good.
Unpump them. And now we're going to talk top 3, bottom 3. How do you want to start this off?
You want to alternate our top 3? You can give one. I'll give one.
That's fine with me. So I don't have mine in any particular order. In the first spot is the preachification of Convincing John for top 3. Great Fraggle lore. We get the ancient oath of the Fraggle. Great Convincing John musical number, and just Jim playing himself and really going for it. Wider hints at sort of the ecological impact between doozers and Fraggles that we see elsewhere. And really why just Convincing John. Convincing John, the song, listen to Convincing John and our troubles will be gone, is maybe one of the catchiest numbers in all of Fraggle Rock.
My number 1 is the preachification of Convincing John.
Yeah.
It was just, I think, Jim just really sells that charismatic character, which I wish we would see again. I don't know if it ever comes back, but, and like you said, also tons of doozers was one of my favorite things. They were very prevalent in this episode because it's all about them stopping eating the doozer constructions, and they find that they have to eat them because it's part of the balance. And I love that the episodes that do the world building of the Fraggle universe. And this really is one of the first ones in the season that was really showing the whole ecosystem they have. And it was just really cool. And that song was
fantastic. The Fraggles have stopped eating doozer constructions. Why, Mommy? They're heartless.
That's a fantastic line. They're heartless. They won't eat our constructions. Oh, it's amazing. So all
right, my next one, The Minstrels. It was a big confirmation of like real magic in the Fraggle world.
Oh yeah.
Sort of the mantle that music is the key to Fraggle's existence and shared cultural experience. And just once again, I hate saying this, but Jim just sold the hell out of Cantus with some genuinely funny moments. And I love that Jim, the first time ever we got to see like a Fraggle be really disappointed with other Fraggles.
Yeah.
And also another one of my top musical numbers ever, Let Me Be Your Song, one of my favorite songs ever.
Oh, yeah. That was a good one. That was close to my list. But my number 2 is We Love You, Wembley.
Ooh.
Wembley learns to assert his own needs and the importance of mutual respect in friendships. I think Wembley is just one of my favorite characters. He's so lovable and he's such a doofus, but like he's just trying his best and he wants to appease everybody. And the 30-minute work week was a close second because that's where he finds
that was what really high on mine.
Because that's where he finds his place as the fire brigade siren, but this is a similar episode in that regard. It gives Wembley the spotlight. But I love that he finds that this new friend Lou, who's like, she's really sweet to him, and she shows him how his other friends should be treating him. He's like, wait a minute, like they're not treating me the way I should as my friends. And I don't know, it's really stuck with me, that episode, and it was so lovable and taught a good lesson that like you should not let your friends treat you that way. They're supposed to be your friends. And I was like, yeah, that's right. So I really like that one.
Shout out to 30-minute work week and Fireman's Job is Never Ever Done.
That was a great number.
Hot song, great song.
Absolutely.
And my third one, The Great Radish Famine. All 4 major groups. It's the first episode where all 4 had some plot involved. We got a show of the Trash Heap's true powers, that she can just make things appear, disappear, be what she wants. We got big Doozer energy as he got to shout at a Gorg. Absolutely loved it. Finally getting to see all 4 groups get their spotlight moment. And that's also where we got the Doozer marching song, which is also hot fire.
Oh, yes. It's fire.
As the kids set that shoulder, move that boulder.
My number 3 is The Great Radish Famine.
Yes.
2 out of 3 ain't bad. Yeah, just that brings everybody together. And just it could have been the finale of the season 1, like, because it brings everyone together. This massive thing, like it could have been the finale. I think there's no way of not having that one on the list because it was great. It ties everything together that we like about Fraggle Rock.
Absolutely.
So now let's
get to the worst, the ones we struggled with. First off, in no particular order, the challenge. This is one where Red challenges Gobo's leadership, and there was something really disenchanting about watching the 2 main characters just take like personal attacks at each other.
Yeah.
And then the episode got really slow because they get trapped in a basket at one point, and it's just back and forth from them being trapped and nothing. And the pace of the episode really suffered because of that. I will say, though, bright point, Dixie Whalen, when Junior thought he was dead, and then came back because he was dancing, that whole bit, pure gold.
That was good.
But it wasn't enough to save the episode.
Fair. I remember reading about the challenge, like maybe the challenge is on there, but I found one that's for a silly reason. My number 1, not in a particular order, but it's for a silly reason, but it stuck with me. It's a what do you call it? Something in my craw, stuck in my craw. The Capture the Moon is the episode. So,
okay,
not a bad episode overall. I like where they're going with it. I just could not get over that they don't know how reflections work or any
right. That they think the moon lives in their pool.
They have mirrors, probably. They have technology that surpasses what reflections are, and for some reason that just ruined that episode for me so hard that I couldn't get over the rest of it. Even though the rest of the episode was beautiful, probably good songs, and I was like, no, that's just stupid. It messes with the whole mythos of who they are. I couldn't get over it.
Well, but you don't know. But maybe Fraggles are so unvain.
They don't have a single mirror.
that it never even crossed their mind to look at their own reflections in the water.
They can't help but see them.
No, maybe they're just so blind because they're so disinterested in themselves.
Well, if they had one line of dialogue that said that I'd be going for it, but no.
Well, we got a lot of seasons to go. They might fix it.
That's true. That one probably won't stay on my list as the seasons go on, like as the worst of all time. But for this season, that's
all right, my next one is Marooned. This is just another one where 2 Fraggles are stuck together somewhere. There's a lot of moping and sadness, no good motion in the episode. And it just, once again, suffered pacing and dragged because it was just them trapped somewhere.
Yeah, my number 2 is Marooned.
Yeah.
I put also that there are probably episodes I think were even slower and more boring than this one, but they don't make my list because they don't stand out in my head afterwards. But this one, I think, was the first one we talked about where it was just too dark and depressing. And I think the reason for that is that Red and Boober's performances were fantastic. but too good because they were too realistic.
Yeah, it was just soon like we're gonna die.
Yeah, and it was unsettling how dark it was because they were acting it too well with the puppets. And I was like, I'm believing this, and it hurts, and I don't want to watch this. This is sad. So yeah, that's why it's on my list too.
All right, my third, The Finger of Light.
Oh,
my big issue with this one, I even voiced at the time, is that they have the world's oldest Fraggle there, and he is literally describing the plot as it's happening. They're literally singing out loud, "Where are we gonna go? Over the bridge. What are we like?" And it just it made the entire thing tedious because of this. And then Mokey being the chosen one, which happens a lot. I feel like Mokey's been the chosen one like 4 times in this first season, and then it turning into a gag of her accidentally using her wishes instead of using it as a story plot to explore. I think was such a throwaway. And then it ends with Wembley balancing a pickle on his nose. It's just not my favorite. Not my favorite.
I didn't even see it that way, but you're absolutely right. That makes sense. I'm going along with the marooned theme, and Mokey's funeral takes number 3.
It was close. Yeah, you're not wrong.
Also, well done, well made. Wouldn't normally be a bad episode of a different show, but just it was also the disturbing image of her making that rag doll of her dead body and then just seeing the gore throw it around, and it looked like it was just a dead Mokey. Like that was just, if I was a kid, that'd be too disturbing. And Gobo and Red do this heavy grieving over her dead body. And was like, this is too heavy. for
I think the only silver lining of that episode is that we get confirmation that like Junior doesn't really want to hurt him.
Yeah, that's true.
He's like a puppy chasing a car. He doesn't know what to do with it once he catches it.
Despite all of his threats and everything, he doesn't really want to hurt him. Yeah, so that was my number 3. I think we had 1 in common for the bottom and 2 in common for the top.
All right.
I think it makes it real.
So our top 3, once again, our preachification of Convincing John, The Minstrels, The Great Ravaged Famine, and We Love You, Wembley.
Mm-hmm.
I get that right?
Yep.
And then the bottom are The Challenged, Marooned, Finger of Light,
Capture the Moon.
Capture the Moon was the last one.
And Mokey's Funeral.
Mokey's Funeral. There we go. Well, the first season is now locked in.
Absolutely.
Very exciting. So, Jarman, what happened this week in Star Trek?
That's right. We still have Star Trek to cover here, folks.
I know. We got so much to talk about.
So this episode, which I didn't remember this title, is Up the Long Ladder. I guess I just forgotten about this episode. The Enterprise receives a weird distress signal from a previously unknown human colony on the planet Bringloid 5. When they get there, they see that it's in danger from a growing solar flare from the nearby star that's going to go supernova, basically. And after some research, they find out this colony came from the crew of a USS Mariposa that launched from Earth several hundred years ago, which had gotten lost in paperwork, so no one ever knew it went out there. And on a side plot that goes nowhere, really goes nowhere, Worf gets sick, and he's embarrassed to admit that to Dr. Pulaski. He doesn't want the crew to find out, but she tells him his secret's safe with her, so he thanks her by performing a Klingon tea ceremony, and then that's the end of the B-plot. That's it. The Enterprise then ends up transporting all of the Bringloidi people up to the ship to evacuate them from the planet, and they find out that they are descendants of this philosopher's teachings on Earth, where they want to go back to this pastoral, agricultural lifestyle with little technology, which in reality for this episode means they are basically Irish stereotypes from the 1800s, kind of late early 1900s. And they're led by this drunk guy named Danilo Odell and his daughter Brenna. And Odell tells Picard that there was a second colony that was also planted by the Mariposa back in the day nearby, on a nearby planet. So they go to investigate that one. And apparently that colony calls themselves Mariposa after the ship that took them there. After they get to they find this colony, they find out it's the opposite of the other colony, and that they are very advanced and everyone there was scientists. And when Pulaski and Riker go down to the colony, they quickly discover that they are all clones. They hired some triplet actors for this, which is kind of neat. I didn't even realize you can have identical triplets. It was pretty cool. Their prime minister there is Wilson Granger, and he tells them that when the ship arrived, it crashed and it killed all but 5 of the colonists. So since they were all scientists, they figured out they couldn't keep reproducing with such a small population. So they decided they would clone themselves for generations to keep their people alive. And after a while, they just lost all drive for normal sexual reproduction because they just wanted to clone each other all the time. But then another problem arose because they're all suffering from replicative fading, which is where generations of clones start to develop flaws in their genetic code, and they eventually won't be able to clone anymore. Kind of like we saw in Multiplicity on our Play on Nerds show, where you clone a clone, eventually it's going to start getting screwy. So the Mariposans asked the Enterprise crew if they'll donate their genetic material so they can create new clones to continue their colony. But the crew refuses, especially Riker. He's like, no, I'm unique. You can't clone me. He gets really pissed about it. They make Riker and Pulaski. But then after they refuse, the Mariposans kidnap Riker and Pulaski and they steal their DNA. And they make them forget this ever happened. And they return them to the Enterprise. But with Geordi's help, because he knew something fishy happened, they start to remember what happened. And they go back down to the planet and they find the lab where their clones are already growing in these pods. And really creepy and gross. And pissed off now, Riker destroys both of the growing clones. Right as Prime Minister Granger comes in with his guards, they catch them in the act. So then Granger goes before Picard to beg for more DNA to continue their cloning. But Pulaski argues this will just delay the inevitable, where those clones will eventually become non-viable as well, just like the old ones. So Pulaski suggests, kind of what we're all thinking, that they just reintegrate with the Bringloidi people and they start banging again, naturally, the natural way. But Granger is reluctant at first, but then he goes to a party with the Bringloidi for a little bit and he starts to warm up to the idea. And back earlier in the show, Odell's daughter Brenna bangs Riker and then never talks about it again. And as soon as she meets the Prime Minister, she starts chasing after him because he's rich and powerful and it would make a good match. Because they basically have to all every man has to have like 3 wives and impregnate 3 different women. And each woman needs to have a baby by 3 different men. So they're all going to be like polyamorous and have a little fun sexcapades. So that was the episode. Steve, what'd you think of it?
All right, so some things I liked. I like that it was kind of a time travel episode without it being a time travel episode.
Oh, yeah, in a way, yeah.
Because, they took on this group of people that was very out of time.
Mm-hmm.
I did like the Pulaski Worf stuff. We got some cool Klingon. We got some cool character building. But then you're right. They didn't. I was like, where's the third part of this?
Yeah, where's it going?
Where does this pay off? But what we got was good.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so then they suddenly abandoned it, I guess, like to support 2 different A-plots, basically. And I do like that solution. The solution was very Star Trek in that one group has a problem they can't fix. They've got to make, not say sacrifices, but choices if they're going to go. There's a group that needs their help. It was very good and reciprocal, and so felt very Star Trek.
Diplomatic.
Though it did feel bad that they were... that the fancy people were basically depicted as the bad guys for a little bit there, because then when they stole Riker's DNA, that brought up a lot of kind of questionable issues.
Mm-hmm.
Some things I struggled with a little bit. I felt that the ending was so gross with Brenna.
Yeah.
A strong female character who gives them hell about women having to pay the debt of men. And she was a great, strong feminist character with feminist moment. And then her turning on a dime to being just okay having 3 husbands because she's attracted to the Prime Minister because of his power.
Yeah.
It was like, come on. You did all that and then we just threw it away.
And on that note, I thought it was strange that their whole culture seemed very predicated on arranged marriages for the sake of, power and for stability and security. And then she just goes off and sleeps with Riker and just doesn't talk about it again. At the same point, I'm like, hey, feminist message, like she wants to have sex with him, go for it. No shame there. But it just felt out of character for their culture. It was very weird. It was kind of out of nowhere.
And it felt like there was no driving force. Like, yes, the cloners were running out of time, but it wasn't like they were on a countdown in that moment.
There wasn't immediate.
Because of that, there was no pressure for these things to happen. And you could kind of feel it in the episode.
Right.
But overall, pretty good. It probably won't end up in my top 3, but I don't think it'll float to the bottom.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a sillier episode, and I think it's nice to have a silly episode every now and then. Just kind of like, there's not as high of stakes. They just need to solve this issue, but it's not going to cause the universe to explode. I also thought you could kind of see the solution a mile away. And it was kind of annoying to see, like,
very prescribed.
Yeah, like, why hasn't the crew found this out yet? Like, we all know what should be done here, but then they just kind of takes them forever to figure that out. But yeah, middle of the road episode. Some silly, fun moments. Brenna was a very attractive lady, so that's always nice as well.
She was.
A very revealing outfit in the episode.
Oh, boy, was she. Oh, boy, was it.
But there's some Trek facts for this episode. While filming the scene where Picard, Riker, and Worf investigate the fire that the Irish folk set in the cargo bay so they could cook, Patrick Stewart found the dialogue so hilarious that he started laughing uncontrollably and forced himself to turn his back to the camera to continue. But the cameras are still rolling, and Jonathan Frakes, as Riker approaches him in character, and Stewart, still laughing, turned back around and improvised the line about bowing his head to the bowing to the absurd. I think was the line he says, but that was improvised apparently. And they left it all on in the episode, which is kind of neat. The title, "Up on the Ladder," or whatever it was,
Up the Long Ladder. Up
the Long Ladder is part of the traditional Irish expression, "up the long ladder and down the short rope," which means being executed by hanging. That's kind of their way of saying it.
Ah, cool.
Cole Meany, who plays the Transporter Chief O'Brien, was reportedly not too thrilled by the story's depiction of Irish characters. Big surprise, because it's very stereotypical. Being little more than a bit player, though, at the time, he had no say in the scripts. But years later, in the episode If Wishes Were Horses, Meany was a series regular by then and was given a script focusing on O'Brien's Irishness in a condescending way. And he had the Wishes story rewritten to eliminate or at least mitigate that slant of it where it had these very stereotypical stuff in it. Good for him. Geordi explains to Riker and Pulaski that his visor can act as a lie detector by revealing physiological changes in a human who is lying, which is pretty crazy. And this ability is never mentioned again in any other episode because it would probably break too many storylines where he can just sense someone's lying. I mean, that's kind of Troy's job. I don't know.
Yeah, true.
And the last thing is the HD Blu-ray DVD release of this episode revealed a visual gag that the production team had inserted originally in the episode, but it's too blurry to be seen on television screens back in the 80s. So the Enterprise computer record display refers to a ship called the HMS New Zealand making a diplomatic visit to the planet Alderaan, thus linking it to the Star Wars universe.
Gross.
So technically, that'd be canon. They're all related. They're in the same universe. But see, what's Trek connections we got this time around?
Oh, boy, do I got some. The character, leader of the colony, Danilo O'Dell, was played by actor Barry Ingham. He voiced the character of Basil, the protagonist in Disney's The Great Mouse Detective.
Oh.
Opposite him was the villainous Ratigan, voiced by Vincent Price, who was a special guest star on The Muppet Show.
That's right.
And then Brenna O'Dell was played by actress Rosalind Landor. She was in 1983's Merlin and the Sword. She played Guinevere. The antagonist, Morgan Le Fay, was played by Candice Bergen. Both she and her father, Edgar Bergen, were Muppet Show guests. And Edgar and his dummy, Charlie McKenzie.
McCarthy, yeah.
McCarthy. I was pretty close. Charlie McCarthy made a cameo in the Muppet movie as beauty pageant judges.
Very nice.
So, bam. Both two guest players, two good connections.
Absolutely. They're always saving the day. Which
right.
makes sense because they're the same episode.
Same damn thing.
The same universe.
Both feature people with ailments. Worf and his not fainting, quote unquote, and Gobo nursing a broken leg from his thumping.
That's true. Both have a civilization that must learn to be brave enough to do something outside their comfort zone to stay alive. A long walk for this one. The clones taking the leap to mate with the Irish folk took some bravery.
Okay.
And the Fraggles being brave enough to go through the Gorg Garden again to seek out the Trash Heap's advice.
But it's really important.
That's right.
I like it. Both feature people going to others with their problems. Similar vein, the cloners going to the Enterprise for help with their failing clones, and Boober seeking the Trash Heap's help with grass stain advice.
That's right. That's true. Both find out that making a copy of something isn't as good as the original. The clone civilization find out about replicative fading in their DNA, and the Fraggles find out that Mokey isn't a sufficient copy or replacement for the Trash Heap.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Tough but fair.
Tough but fair. Oh, what's that noise?
Transporter malfunction. Transporter malfunction.
It's that time of the show where we transport one character from one episode to the other and vice versa. So what you got for us, Steve?
So Trek to Rock, I'm going to bring over Worf to replace Gobo. Suddenly him challenging Junior to a duel and not backing down would make total and epic sense at the end of the episode.
I'd love to watch a Klingon fight Junior.
That's right.
I love how you spell Worf like a sea wharf. Like
like a wharf, Thunder Wharf.
Trek to Rock, I'd bring over the Irish old dude Danilo O'Dell to replace Doc.
Yeah.
Because it honestly wouldn't be that much of a change.
It wouldn't.
It'd just be more drinking, and he definitely still drives Sprocket insane.
I feel like he was definitely up for the role, you know?
Yeah, he could have been cast. Maybe he's on the Irish Fraggle Rock.
In this timeline, it's about right.
Yeah, that's true.
And then Rock to Track, I'm going to bring over Gobo and replace the village people. And I think it would be really great for the cloners to look down on the Fraggles, seeing them as simple folk, and then suddenly needing them to clone for their destiny.
And there'd be a weird, like, human Fraggle hybrid.
Human Fraggle hybrids.
Creepy. Rock to Trek, I'd bring over the Trash Heap and Philo and Gunge to replace the clone people. So she'll basically have been cloning them for generations as her companions for centuries.
They come out as Philo and Gunge.
But then eventually there's drooling morons like in Multiplicity over the years.
I'm a clone of him, and I'm a clone of him, and I'm a clone
I don't
of
want to
him.
hear anymore. That works out perfectly. But that brings us to the end of episode 146 of the MuppeTrek Podcast.
Join us next time for Fraggle Rock episode Wembley's Egg
and Star Trek The Next Generation episode Manhunt.
So, from the lovers, the dreamers, and us,
live long and prosper, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the MuppeTrek Podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media on Facebook and Twitter.
Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform.
This podcast has been brought to you by A Play on Nerds.